What's up? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a new video. So we're going to be doing an install on the car tonight. We're actually going to be installing a Perrin pitch mount. What this actually does is it reduces the amount of shudder in the drivetrain. So under harder acceleration and braking and everything like that, there's less actual movement of the drivetrain. What that actually does is it transfers the power to the wheels as opposed to getting lost in, in the actual movement of the drivetrain. So having a much firmer mount there is going to reduce that actual shudder. This piece is absolutely beautiful. I'll compare it to the stock one. The stock one is, a piece of plastic with some really crappy rubber bushings. These are poly bushings, so they will basically never wear down. And the actual brace itself is, I think it's made of, I don't know what's made of, probably aluminum, but it's super strong, and it's gonna last probably longer than the car will. These come in a few different colors if you're interested in getting other than the red one that I got. They also come in black and silver, as well as a neon green, the basic 2018 plus Brembo color. And they also come in a teal, which is a pretty popular and newer color from Perrin. I wish they came in white so they matched my engine bay, but they didn't offer it in white. I was thinking about getting silver just to kind of match it. Plus I really like red, and it matches the red in the engine bay, so I figure I might as well scoop it up. So super easy install. The hardest part is actually removing the intercooler and also reinstalling it. So that is going to take the most time. Otherwise, it's just 2 bolts here and there. It's super simple, super straightforward. I actually did this same install on my 2013 WRX, so I'm very familiar with how to do it. Although the 2013 WRX, the intercooler, is much simpler to remove, just because it's it's smaller, less hoses and stuff. But I'm gonna walk you through it. Very simple to do, and we'll get this installed. All right, so there's 5 different steps that you want to do in order to take the intercooler out. I'm going to go over them quickly, but I'll walk you through them as I'm doing them. The first thing that we're going to want to do is actually remove the bolts right here to remove the lines. You can just pop off these hoses, but I found that they're really hard to take off. So the best way to do it that I found is just removing the bolts and kind of just sliding it forward. Then you're able to kind of pull the intercooler out. The next thing that we're going to do is remove the 2 bolts to your bypass valve. You can leave it all attached to the hoses, but removing it here is the easiest way to do it. After that, we're going to remove the throttle body clamps right here. They're just 2 8mm, or you can use a flathead. And then down underneath, there is a Y pipe. Same thing, same clamp. You're not gonna be able to really get an 8mm in there. I'm just gonna get a long screwdriver, unscrew that. Then I believe these are 12mm bolts on either side on the brackets. And then you're gonna basically wiggle it out of the throttle body coupler here, and then pull it to the driver's side to pull it off the Y pipe. So that is basically the steps. I'm gonna do them all right now so you guys get an idea of how to take it out. The next step that we're going to do, now we got the lines loose, is we're going to remove the 2 12mm on the bypass valve. Now you want to be careful when you're doing this because there is a gasket between the intercooler and the bypass valve, so you don't want to drop that. All right, so now that we got the lines removed as well as the bypass valve, next thing we're going to remove the throttle body clamps. I'm just using a flathead here. You can use an 8mm if you want, but find it a little bit easier with a screwdriver. So we're just gonna get them loose. Now, if you look down there, kind of hard to see, but there's a clamp right there, and right underneath there's the same exact clamp, 8mm. I'm just gonna use my flathead screwdriver, same thing I use here, loosen that up, and then we can move on to the bolts on the side here. Okay, so we got the Y pipe clamp undone. Now we're just going to take the bolt right here. There's the same one on the other side. They are 12mm, same exact thing as the bolts up here and as well as the bypass valve. So we're going to loosen them and take them out, and we'll be able to slide the intercooler out. All right, so now everything's unbolted that it needs to be unbolted. Now it's kind of the tricky part, maneuvering this out of here. There's not much space. I'm actually gonna pull the intercooler towards the actual cabin of the car because I wanna get it off the throttle body first. And then once I got some clearance off of that, I can slide it this way off the turbo on the Y pipe. All right, so I have an extra step that I need to do. I was hoping that I wouldn't have to do it. Not that it's hard, but it's just an extra step. I have the Perrin strut bar. It's actually limiting me actually moving this the intercooler back because it goes behind there. So I'm going to remove it. All it is just some Allen screws right on top right here, and then I can slide it right out. So I'm going to go ahead and get that off so I have ample room to move back the intercooler. I could probably finagle it out, but I would end up scratching the bar, and I don't want to do that. So let me get the bar off real quick, and then we can take the intercooler out. All right, so we popped the strut bar off. It took 2 minutes. It's just, like I said, 4 Allen screws, and you slide it out. So now I got a little bit more room to actually move the intercooler back off the throttle body, which is the problem that I was having. Now I got some more space. You also want to remove this hose over here. There's a little clip that onto the side of the intercooler. You just slide it off the little C clip right there. We got the intercooler out. One of the things I wanted to check was to see if there was any oil in the turbo down here as well as the intercooler. And sure enough, we got a little bit of oil. I mean, it's pretty typical with these motors. It's in the Y pipe as well, kind of hard to see, but there's some right there. So that is why it's so important to install an AOS on this car. Kind of hard to see in the turbo there, but there's a little pooling of oil as well. So, you know, if anybody is saying that you don't need an AOS or it's not important, you know, it's definitely recommended because all of this is just blow by, and that would have been caught by the AOS. I'm glad I have the IAG V3 Street AOS that I'm going to install. So that will take care of that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to clean it up with some paper towels. Obviously the car's not going to be driven much in the meantime, but I figured I would clean it up before it goes back on the car anyway. Now that we removed the intercooler, now it's time to actually start on the pitch stop install, well, actually the removal of the stock one. As you can see, it's right here. There's just 2 14mm bolts. We got one right there and then one on the back right there. So we simply just remove those and it slides right out. Then we're going to come over to the Perrin one. The only extra thing you need to do is install some supplied lube onto the bushings here. So we're just going to smear that on and then slip it right back into the bracket over here, tighten them up, and we'll be done. So super simple install, but again, I'll set the camera up and kind of walk you through it. Removing the intercooler was the hardest and longest part of this whole thing, and especially reinstalling it. It's a pain in the butt to get that Y pipe back onto that turbo. But the actual pitch stop mount install is super simple. So let me loosen those bolts up and we'll get going on the install. All right, so here we go. Here's the difference. There's a stock one. It's very flimsy. It's plastic. It has some really flexible rubber in here. And you can tell this is just much beefier, much better bushings, much stronger. It's going to reduce all the actual movement and shudder that this thing was providing. So the transmission, the firewall, and everything like that that it's connected to, it's going to hold it in place much better. So it's going to put the power down to the wheels way better than you know, this flimsy little thing here. So we're going to be using the same stock bolts. The front bolt here that connects to the transmission, which is this one with the nut, that is going to be tightened to 37 foot-pounds. And then the rear, we're going to do 43 foot-pounds. This one does not have a nut. There's already a nut on the actual brace. So it's, you know, it's actually welded on there, so you don't have to worry about that. But this one, you know, you just have to make sure that the nut comes off with it. There's also 2 spacers that goes on either side of the bracket. So you want to make sure you don't lose those. If you guys saw it in a couple clips ago, you saw that this was hanging right on the edge of the bolt. Remember, there was a washer there, so I caught it at the last second. So let me go ahead and lube this up, get it all ready, and we'll slide it in. That sounded terrible, but you know what I mean. All right, so that was 37. Now the rear, I'm going to do 43. You just want to be careful when you're doing the rear, when you bring it back down. This is the AC line. You don't want to hit that. All right. Good. All right, so we are done. Pitch stop is installed. It looks really good. Matches the red right here. Obviously, you're not going to be seeing it because I'm going to be putting the top mount on. You might be able to see if you look from the side, but otherwise, you know, it's not that really noticeable once the top mount is back on. Take a good look because once I put the top mount back on, you're not going to be able to see it, but looks really good. I'm really happy I chose red. It's, you know, a little different. It's not, doesn't blend in as much. So as you can see, the stock is super ugly. Not that it really, like I said, you don't even see it, but so much nicer having the Perrin over there. The nice little pop of color. So, all right, let's get to installing the intercooler that I have down here, and we will wrap up this job. All right guys, so that wraps up the install. As you saw, it was very simple. Again, the intercooler was the hardest part about it. Just getting them back onto the actual couplers and everything. The turbo inlet and the the hose to get that on there is pretty tough. And then getting obviously this on as well, just positioning it. There's really not much room in this engine bay, so it's kind of hard to manipulate. But what I found was getting that pipe on first and then kind of sliding it like this. Then eventually this would pop on and we're good to go. So once those two hoses get on, everything lines up perfect. You really, I mean, like I said, not going to be able to really see it, but it is under there, and knowing it's done. One thing that I noticed, I haven't driven this yet on this car, but on my WRX, I noticed on startup, there's just a more audible noise just because there's less vibration. It kind of transfers into the cabin. It's not, you know, crazy or anything, but you notice just the start sounds a little bit different just because it's more firm. It's always going to happen when you put stiffer bushings into a car anywhere, actually. You'll just feel a little bit more vibration in the car. It's not anything crazy, but that's one thing you'll notice. Another thing that I noticed in my WRX, which is probably the most important part, is when you actually go to accelerate really hard, you actually feel the power come on a little bit quicker. It's not gonna make your jaw drop or anything like that, but you'll notice it's a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more instant, just because that slop is gone. It's one of those things that, you know, if you have stuff in your cart and you're looking for maybe like, I want to do something else, it's one of those things. It's impulse buy territory. It's 99 bucks. It's nothing crazy. So I ended up throwing it in there when I was getting new spark plugs. I got NGK spark plugs as well as a spark plug gapper and a feeler gauge. And I also got the Get a Dom cylinder 4 cooling mod. So those are going on the car as well. I was due for a spark plug change, so it was one of those things. I was like, you know what? I wanted to get it. Might as well do it now. So I did it. Install, very simple. It took about an hour or so. You know, I was taking my time. Obviously, I was filming, so it takes a little bit longer. But otherwise, you can probably do this in a half an hour or so if you follow this video. It's a little frustrating if this is your first time kind of working on a car or you don't really do too much. And by frustrating, I mean just the intercooler part. The actual install, the pitch stop is, I mean, you saw it was 2 bolts, very simple. Yeah, guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, be sure to ask them below. I'll be happy to answer. I will link the pitch stop below if you guys are interested. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to ask them below. But in the meantime, keep it clean, keep it simple, and I'll catch you in the next one.